Hold the door. Don't hold the door. Great. Ever had a morning like this? Of course you have. We all do. You've got a big meeting with the boss and everything's working against you. And there's always someone who thinks he's got a magic finger, even though he just saw you press the button. So you press it again, just to make sure. And then when you think you're gonna make it, exactly. This here's the story of how we moved up in the world. Well, on most days. Life moves fast. It's a sign of the times. We certainly don't want to waste time. Go, go, go!
Tout s'accélère dans notre société. On veut tout de suite, l'immédiateté. On n'est plus prêt à attendre.
Things move this way and that way, and like this, and like him, and this thing. And things move up in so many ways. Take this moving box here, the elevator. We just hop on, then we hop off, and then again and again, on most days, in most cities. But let's be clear, elevators haven't just helped us go up. They've literally shaped the world we live in.
Without the elevator, the way we live now, it's inconceivable. They changed the world completely.
Okay, sometimes we get angry when this button does nothing, or when we're stuck, even for just 20 seconds. But they are useful little things.
You're brought to the level you want to go. It doesn't need any effort, right? It's very easy.
Elevators have changed the way we build, the way we work, and the way we live.
If you have a 20-story building and the elevators don't work, everything stops.
The faster we can get from here to here, then back down here, then up again, but here, well, the less time we waste. At least in theory, right?
Ce processus d'accélération, c'est vraiment l'illustration de cette société hyper moderne dans laquelle on est. On court après le temps. Et ce paradoxe, plus on gagne du temps, moins on en a.
So, we're hoping to save time. With regards to what exactly? To walking? To taking the stairs? How certain are we that this mechanical invention is in fact a time saver?
You cannot save time and put it on your bank account as you can save money.
Ever thought about that? While you're riding inside a box that's pulling you upwards hundreds of meters above ground level? Or are you too busy taking this man-made marvel for granted? I guess it's all just a question of time. The earliest examples of elevators go back to ancient Egyptian times, where they'd already devised various pulley systems in order to maximize the time and effort spent building what were basically giant tombs. There's also evidence of an elevator hoistway in the Roman Colosseum, completed in the year 80. That's almost 2,000 years before electricity could help anyone. If we jump forward a whole lot, well, not that much. The industrial age, yeah. Now, people wanted schedules, routine, precision, and efficiency. And so began a whole new era of managing time and of being on time.
Les paysans, ils se levaient avec le lever du soleil, ils se couchaient avec le coucher du soleil, ils respectaient les saisons, les rythmes. Je pense que c'est l'évolution, en fait, de nos technologies, de l'industrialisation, la volonté de toujours vouloir avoir plus, produire plus, qui crée ce cercle infernal par rapport au temps dans notre société.
How and where does the elevator fit in? Well, it's a good question.
The first machine-powered industrial lifts are introduced into Europe in the early 1800s. From the early 1800s through 1850, all mechanized lifts are what we would call freight hoists or freight elevators. They were designed not to carry people, but to carry goods and products.
These lifts made factories a lot more efficient, moving heavy loads up and down much more rapidly than having workers carrying things using stairs. It was just a question of time before they could be used to carry people. And then it happened. A small and seemingly inconsequential invention changed the game. And it wasn't the ability to go higher or faster, but rather the ability to stop. Believe it or not, mid-19th century New York, with just a fraction of its current population, was already running out of space. But just in the nick of time, this fellow unleashes his brand new safety brake on the world, enabling the rise, quite literally, of the passenger elevator.
In 1854, Elijah Otis at the Crystal Palace in New York City, which was a large exhibition hall, exhibited a new safety device for a freight elevator.
It was quite simple. If the cable snapped, a ratchet would pop open and catch on racks that ran alongside the shaft, stopping the car's descent almost immediately. As the elevator became safer for people, it made its way from the factories to the cities, and, well, it permanently altered their size, shape, and functionality. Just like that, we were expanding upwards.
It all came together in the early 20s and into the 30s. You had all of this industry in Manhattan looking for places and people wanting to invest money, wanting to make their statement that I have this beautiful building, and the invention of the elevator and the fact that we have this ability to build with steel and concrete. And this allowed us to eventually end up with this incredible landscape that we have here.
Big and tall buildings began sprouting up across major cities in North America, and soon after that, across the Atlantic. From that point forward, things evolved quickly. This guy, Félix Léon Hédoux, is the French engineer who actually invented the word ascenseur. That's French for elevator. He created a hydraulic version of the contraption in 1867, and the one he built for the Eiffel Tower was in operation until 1983. Now, and you probably guessed it, the rise of the elevator also had an immediate impact on the real estate market and its development.
Prior to the elevator, in renting space, the most expensive spaces were the ones closest to the street, the most easily accessible. The cheaper rents were the top floors because I had to climb stairs.
Suddenly, the upper levels were attractive to the wealthier class. The luxury apartments migrated to the top floors, which offered better views, more light, and, well, less street noise. At least in America. In Paris, the top floors of the city's 19th century apartments were still home to the maids, who worked for the wealthier residents of the lower floors. You see, there were no elevators, so the narrow service stairs were used to hike up those 6 or 7 flights leading to the top floors. But why didn't skyscrapers catch on in Europe?
The cities in Europe were established long before the cities in the United States, and they had lots of buildings already, and most of them were of a height that they didn't really need an elevator, because when they were built, elevators weren't a possibility. When the elevator was invented in New York, it still had lots of room for new buildings. So they were able to plan buildings just getting higher and higher and higher.
As cities grew taller, of course, the elevator evolved. From hydraulic to electrical traction, from manual to automatic, and from very slow to super fast. But the basic mechanics of the elevator haven't really changed that much at all. A motor at the top of the shaft turns a sheave, that's essentially a pulley, that raises and lowers metal cables attached to the car. Now, the car is attached to these guide rails that keep everything in place. And all the way at the other end is a counterweight to balance everything out. For the longest time, time wasn't even a consideration. It was all about safety and comfort.
The first passenger elevators were placed in hotels, or what we would now think of as department stores, and the goal was not speed, it was in fact the opposite. It was luxury.
So, speed didn't drive the initial evolution of the elevator. Funny. Let's be honest. Everything today is about speed. The faster cities grow in population, the more the economy grows, which attracts more people and the need for more high-rise buildings. And, as we now know, there's no such thing as a high-rise building without an elevator.
There's certainly no question. If we did not have the modern elevator, we would not have the modern city today.
And so naturally, elevators are carrying an unimaginable amount of people all over the globe at any given time. 100 million elevator trips are made each day in France, making it the most used mode of transportation in the country. The Otis Elevator Company estimates that its elevators transport the equivalent of the world's population every 3 days. And that's just one company. I mean, nearly 13 billion elevator trips are made each year just in New York. Hello? Hello? Imagine the numbers on a global scale. The quantity of people selling, building, and servicing elevators. The quantity of businesses making these buttons and this mirror. The moving companies, the emergency services, the room service staff in all these hotels, the light bulbs, the key card makers, the person responsible for this song. Yeah. Well. It's a whole economy just around the elevator, and the world depends on them.
If you ever around elevator professionals or you go to any elevator conference, 90% of the conversation is about safety, and elevators are, if you look at the millions and millions of miles traveled every day in elevators, they are the safest form of transportation available.
Sure. There are alarm switches and cameras and emergency lighting and this phone, ventilation and infrared sensors and stop switches and backup cables in case one of them snaps. Oh, and Otis's emergency brakes that wedge into the guardrails. But what if, just what if, all of those failed? Well, then you could panic. But the friction and pressure from the air underneath would slow you down, giving you just enough time to clean yourself up before the shock absorber cushioned the blow and the doors slid open.
Elevator technology keeps evolving. We constantly are trying to make them smoother, faster, better, less waiting time for passengers. But what it really means is figuring out how many elevators and in what configuration we need to put in a building to give the maximum service to the users, but the maximum real estate to the landlord.
If you're looking for the world's fastest growing economies, just look for the elevators. The 3 fastest, at least for now, are located in the booming economic hubs of Asia.
And as buildings get taller, elevator technology evolves to line up with those taller buildings.
Shanghai Tower, with its 128 floors, is serviced by 149 elevators, 3 of which can send people up to the 561-meter sightseeing deck in under 60 seconds. Up and down and up again at a blistering 74 kilometers, that's about 46 miles, an hour. That's faster than this thing. The Burj Khalifa in Dubai is, well, for now, the only skyscraper in the world taller than Shanghai Tower, but its elevators reach barely half the speed. The fastest elevator in the West, located at One World Trade Center in Manhattan, runs at a paltry 37 kilometers an hour. 37. It's all a race to the top, to the fastest and highest and most efficient. Hitachi recently designed the world's fastest elevator for the Guangzhou CTC Finance Center in China at 75 kilometers an hour. And chances are, it too will be outranked by the time you watch this show. The point is, the faster everything goes, the faster everything else needs to go, and the less time we seem to have.
There actually was a Life magazine title. It was in the 70s, and it said, oh, our machines will be so efficient that we don't know what to do. We are bored. We have too much time, right? So it seems quite obvious to me that we believe that with fast technologies we can overcome the scarcity of time, and then we can take our time to do things. And of course, that dream never came true.
So there's a chance the elevator isn't saving us time? Maybe even costing us time? Let's reflect on that while we wait here for the elevator. I forgot something in my office. There we go. Anyways, think about it. How many people are standing still, awkwardly waiting, trying not to touch each other inside an elevator around the globe at any given time? Yeah, I don't know either. There's no way to calculate that.
We don't think of elevators as mass transit. We don't think of them as being like the subway system or the streetcar or the bus. But of course, they are a form of mass transit. They move an enormous number of people every day, and they're so taken for granted that we view them almost as teleportation. There's not a part of the journey that we really give any thought to.
Yet the elevator has made it possible to think vertically, to expand upward, to house people in the sky. When it comes to time, how much of it are we really saving or losing?
No matter how rich you are, no matter your intelligence, no matter your socioeconomic status, everyone has 24 hours in a day.
So, if an elevator is held up for some reason, say tomorrow morning, does this mean you'll be late for work because of the elevator? Has this all become part of the time that you no longer calculate? Have we reversed our perception of things to the point where the elevator now costs you time if it's not on time? Are you angry right now? The last 200 years have brought about phenomenal changes. Railways, steamships, telephones, and radios, all collapsing the distance between us all and compressing time in ways that are frankly dazzling and disorienting.
It was not technology which came first. I really believe it was the other way around. People tried to speed up without having new technologies. For example, they changed the roads, right? They made them more straightforward, right, in order to no longer take the curves and bends along the small rivers. And then the speeding up in technology was an answer to a perceived problem of the scarcity of time.
Man, there's so much science and knowledge around the actual measure of time.
Physics and the ideas of physics do shape everyday life in all sorts of ways. People may not know that they're testing general relativity when they put on their watch in the morning or turn the navigator on their car dashboard, but they are. Newton deeply believed that behind all of our measuring devices lay one universal time, a perfect, ideal time that advanced in a way that we would aspire to capture with our best clocks, but could never quite grab. And what Einstein said was, that's not so.
Einstein was able to show that time is actually relative. It depends on our speed and our location through space, and on the tools we have to measure it all.
Alors vous dites on mesure le temps. Moi j'en suis pas sûr, hein. On mesure pas le temps. On mesure des durées, et on ne mesure même pas des durées pures. Par exemple, si je regarde ma montre, je vois la grande aiguille, ou l'aiguille des trotteuses, la trotteuse qui indique les secondes, qui se déplace sur le cadran. Et je dis, ma montre mesure le temps. En fait, non, elle mesure ou elle fait voir le déplacement dans l'espace d'une aiguille. Et j'interprète ce déplacement comme étant un marqueur de la durée qui s'écoule. Mais vous voyez que dans cette opération, j'ai transformé le temps en espace.
Whoa! So should we now calculate distance in time or time in distance? The point is, perception of time in our daily lives is also extremely relative.
La personne qu'attend, elle attend sans rien faire que l'ascenseur descende. Du même coup, toute son attention est focalisée sur le temps. Elle est pressée que l'ascenseur vienne. Et dès qu'elle est dans l'ascenseur, elle pense plus au temps. Dans un certain temps, elle attend, elle supporte pas l'attente. Et dans un autre cas, elle n'attend pas, donc elle fait pas attention. Et elle trouve que le temps passe très vite.
You see, time saving, when it comes to the elevator, only applies in a certain context. The thing is, sometimes lives depend on time. And with vertical expansion, sometimes time depends on the elevator. An insightful study from the Royal University Hospital in Saskatoon measured the average time it took doctors and nurses to travel between two adjacent floors. The results? 13.1 seconds on foot versus 37.5 by elevator. When you take into account a whole day of moving up and down, the difference in time taken to travel by stairs and elevator totaled about 15 minutes per person. Imagine the impact on the patients and the time you save on the Stairmaster. It's all a question of what you expect to get done in a day or year, I guess.
How we spend our time is a reflection of who we are. Nowadays, as we have access to technologies that allow us to speed up, we have greater expectations for ourselves and what we're able to accomplish with the time that we have.
Okay. But waiting for an elevator here and there isn't such a big deal, is it?
We push the button, and if the elevator doesn't come within about 20 to 25 seconds, we push the button again.
We actually freak out after 25 seconds, even if we see that the elevator is on its way.
And if you get impatient and you press it and then you press it again and then maybe finally you just go boom, 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 boom. Okay, as far as the elevator's concerned, it doesn't even know you're doing that. Because that button, once it's activated, doesn't deactivate until the elevator comes to the floor.
And of course, once you're in the elevator, you need it to get moving fast for you. But come on, waiting is part of life, isn't it?
Riding elevators involves waiting. You wait to get on the elevator, and then you're riding in the elevator, waiting to get off.
IBM tallied the time that office workers collectively spent waiting for elevators over a 12-month period. New York City topped the list, followed by Chicago, Los Angeles, and then Houston. More than 41 combined years lost in just 4 cities in 1 year waiting for an elevator. But hey, that gives you time to do other things. I mean, you're gonna wait.
Nous vivons plusieurs présents en même temps. Alors même que nous travaillons, nous sommes en train de regarder un email qui vient d'arriver ou bien d'envoyer un texto, de sorte que notre attention a tendance à se démultiplier.
Don't get me started on multitaskers. Always trying to do more than the rest of us. Imagine if one of them got stuck in an elevator. Because that same IBM study also documents the hundreds of thousands of hours being trapped in one. One of the longest recorded entrapments, I'd call it the longest recorded nightmare, belongs to Manhattanite Nicholas White. In 1999, he spent an entire weekend, 41 hours, stuck inside an elevator in his office building after he decided to go down for a smoke on a Friday evening. The car was shut down for maintenance mid-journey, and his ordeal was caught on tape by security cameras. So, how do you design the perfect elevator system that safely and efficiently transports billions of people around the world each day? Does it serve the person who's been waiting the longest? Does it always go to the closest call? How much time is lost when 11 users push buttons for different floors? Clearly, we all want an elevator to reduce travel time. But how to prioritize your time? Because that's all that really matters, right?
What we need to try to do is to get fewer stops along the way, or to pick you up from your floor in a better fashion.
Most elevators are part of a system. They're governed by a computer which only cares about time efficiency for the whole system. It's not going to stop for you just because you want to go down, no matter how hard you press that button. But you do benefit from what the experts call advanced elevator destination dispatch technology. Kind of like an Uber elevator. Passengers pre-select their destination floors on smart screens on each landing. They're then directed to an elevator with other passengers going to similar floors. When the elevator arrives, it knows exactly where it's going and makes fewer stops on the way there. Serving passengers well is constrained by the number of elevators, their speed, how fast their doors open and close, and how many people can fit in a car. But look how far we've come. So, here's a question for you. What if Otis's elevator brake experiment had failed? What if he hadn't had the idea altogether? At any given moment, roughly 18 million elevators are operating around the world. Up and down, and again, and again. Without them, there would be no skyscrapers, no high-rises, no penthouses, no multi-story car parks. There wouldn't even be skylines.
The modern skyscraper makes dense city living in comfort possible. It makes mass transit possible. You can't really have mass transit unless you have density. And those things together are only possible if you have the elevator.
Mind you, Tokyo has an immense quantity of high-rises, but still stretches all the way to Yokohama. Look at it. This is 40 kilometers, that's 25 miles, of uninterrupted vertical high-density city action. 38 million people, give or take a few. But all of this means that Tokyo probably wouldn't fit in all of Japan without vertical cohabitation. How many kilometers or miles of roads and water pipes and sewage would be needed? How many schools and how many water treatment plants and hey, how many FedEx delivery people and how many grocery stores and markets and banks and ATMs? How much would it cost to put up street signs and bridges and overpasses and streetlights and these things? How much? All right, I'll calm down. But I am right. And it's just basic math. New York City covers approximately 785 square kilometers, 300 square miles, and houses a population of about 8.6 million. Map all these people on a flat scale, and you've got about this. Paris is 105 square kilometers with 2.1 million people. Boom!
Je pense que ça a changé notre rapport à la dimension verticale. La dimension verticale devient, grâce à l'ascenseur, l'équivalent d'une dimension horizontale, puisque l'ascenseur, finalement, c'est un tapis roulant qu'on a dévié de 90 degrés.
And yet, many modern cities that don't depend on skyscrapers and elevators do exist, for all sorts of reasons. Planning restrictions in Dublin cap the maximum height at 60 meters to protect its heritage. In Iceland, the sun is so low in winter that high buildings would quite literally overshadow everything else. In Phoenix, Arizona, what looks like sprawling disarray is actually a polycentric city with multiple city centers spread across the vast desert, instead of being concentrated in one place.
L'urbanisation a entraîné la nécessité de répartir cette population dans un espace. Donc c'est un problème de surpopulation aussi.
And then there are the places without the infrastructure or topography to either stack or sprawl. High-altitude locations, for example, are home to hundreds of millions of people around the world. Far from their urban centers, Many of these places are often underserved, and those that live there lack access to jobs, healthcare, and services. And so here too, things that go up and down, in one form or another, are a critical factor in social integration.
The jobs are not around here. People don't come here to have fun, not even to have fun, to have friends. And that tells you how divided we are.
The city of Medellin in Colombia sprawls up the side of the Andes and is made up of 16 comunas, or districts. Many of its 2.5 million people live on these steep hills, but the center and the city's metro are in the valley below.
Les personnes qui sont plus éloignées des centres-villes sont les personnes qui ont des niveaux socio-économiques plus bas. Et ça a un impact sur le temps, parce que nécessairement, il leur faut plus de temps du point de vue des transports.
Santo Domingo in District 1 sits high above the bustling downtown streets of Medellin.
How you expect a community to change if they are isolated? It's only a one-way solution, connecting from uphill to downtown.
Easier said than done, until you look up.
One of our leaders went into a winter holidays to Switzerland, and he was going to ski, and he saw one of the cable cars, and he said, what if we implement a solution like this for our city?
Invented over a century ago, the system is also referred to as a gondola, aerial tramway, ropeway, cableway, teleferique, funicular, or, wait for it, an inclined elevator. That's because it works on the same cable-propelled principle as, well, the traditional elevator. And just like the elevators that bring us from here to here, the residents of Santo Domingo can now go from here to here in under 20 minutes, where it once took upwards of 2 hours. And that is doubling their access to employment.
Whether a particular part of a city is well served by mass transit or not can make a huge difference. Where a subway line goes, or a bus route goes, or even sometimes a cable car route, can make all the difference as to whether people have access to jobs or not. I would never say that transport solves all problems, just making transport links solves problems, but it certainly creates a great deal of opportunity that wouldn't otherwise be there.
In this case, it was so successful that the city introduced 4 more lines, all fully integrated into the metro system. It transports 30,000 people in and out of the city every day.
So if your life is made up of little strands of time all strung together, then you want those little strands to be as meaningful as possible. But not all strands are created equal from a meaningfulness perspective. And so this idea that you can connect with other people is very important. When you connect to other people, you start to make an impact on others' lives or the lives of society or the world as a whole.
All of this raises fundamental questions. If the elevator, over time, in all of its forms, has allowed new methods of managing people and stuff in large masses, does this mean it's a source of acquired time? Does it owe us something? We plan our lives to the second, expecting the elevator to play a crucial role. But even the best laid plans can be shattered in our haste to get ahead. The world has grown taller and taller, all thanks to this guy. Remember him? His safety brake was the starting point for today's skyscrapers and modern cities. In 1950, only 30% of the world's population lived in cities. Now, more than half of humanity is urbanized. And minute by minute, those cities are getting closer and closer to the sky. But to build all these skyscrapers, we need a lot of raw materials. Concrete, steel, copper wires, tin, and granite. And of course, whatever it takes to build elevators. And you ready for this? Elevators are essential to mining for all those materials. In fact, the longest elevator ride doesn't go up, it goes down. At the Anglo-Gold Ashanti's gold mine in South Africa, the elevator drops an astonishing 2,283 meters, almost 1.5 miles, in a mere 3 minutes. That's more than 4.5 times the distance traveled by elevators in the world's tallest building, the Burj Khalifa.
Ça illustre bien cet imaginaire Laurent de ce toujours plus vite, toujours plus haut. Cette exigence du toujours plus, d'une productivité qui doit s'accélérer en permanence, met la planète en difficulté, met l'économie en difficulté, met du désordre partout.
Because once you've built these high-rises, and of course put in some useful elevators, then you'll need plumbing, windows, carpets, ceiling fans, doors, doorknobs, these soap dispensers. Well, you get the point. They all create jobs and take time and generate salaries and what about the energy costs of creating and running a vertical city? All the water that needs to get to this floor and this one so that we can bathe and do dishes and the laundry. All the power required to bring up groceries and strollers, furniture and fixings, air conditioning, heating, and lighting 80 floors simultaneously. And all the garbage. Because increasing right alongside the steep urbanization of the world is its unpleasant byproduct. With most high-rises outfitted with garbage chutes, it can become an out-of-sight, out-of-mind problem. But it has a huge impact on the ground level. And without some serious measures in place, it's only going to get worse. There's about 63,824,448 square kilometers of habitable land on the planet, and we already occupy a lot of it. Where's all the garbage going to go? It's no surprise that more often than not, we see these vertical cities as dense, high-energy, waste-creating, over-consuming urban jungles. And on a building-by-building analysis, they are, yes. But when we look at the bigger picture, they're actually not.
The data show far lower energy consumption in dense cities than in the countryside or in suburban sprawl. People who live in cities have to cram in together. They're using mass transit, such as the elevator, such as the subway, rather than driving. The houses are smaller, and people are much more likely even to walk to work if you're living in a really dense part of the world. So it doesn't surprise me at all, but it seems to surprise a lot of people.
An analysis out of Harvard and USC demonstrated that the average Manhattanite emits about 2,800 fewer kilos of carbon dioxide annually, about 6,000 pounds, than someone living in the New York suburbs.
I find it hard to imagine a place like Manhattan, the archetypal dense city, being possible without both mass transit and the elevator. They feed into each other, because the elevator allows you to build these incredibly dense either office spaces or living spaces. And that's not just true for Manhattan. Barcelona, for example, is a dense city. Paris is a dense city. London is fairly dense. So the denser the city, the more possible it is to rely on public transport, but at the same time, the more you need the elevator to make those tall buildings work.
And all the material it takes to build a city? Well, yeah, it's mind-boggling. But cities are the solution to the population boom. Doubling the population of any city requires only an 85% increase in infrastructure. That includes roads, electrical cables, water pipes, and gas stations. And we keep getting better at it.
Urban life as the site of modernity is condensed life, compressed life, right? So the way we organize space and the way we organize social life is intrinsically connected to our sense of temporality. It's the subway, and it's the train, and it's the elevator, and it's the escalator, and then it's the visual stimuli and the oral perceptions, the noise and the events going on. So the logic of speed you can really see in inner cities.
So is all of this time saving, this stacking of humans, of businesses and residences paying off?
The densest cities are the ones with the highest output in terms of income per person, in terms of productivity, but also they're highly creative. You can measure patents, for example, per person. It's higher in cities. And yet, at the same time, they're far more environmentally efficient. So this really is what sustainable development looks like. It's a highly dense city.
That's good news, given that more and more people are moving to the cities. Experts are predicting that by 2050, an additional 2.5 billion people will have migrated to urban centers around the globe.
Worldwide, if you put everything together, we are building one Manhattan every single day. And can you imagine how much the cities would have to expand, and how, with help of infrastructure, how would you think you can manage this traffic?
But will higher density and higher cities always be the solution to population growth? And to a better eco-efficiency?
On ne peut pas s'étendre, se répandre à l'horizontale et du même coup, on va trouver une autre dimension qui va être à la verticale. Le problème, c'est que ces tours ont une limite.
So will there be a limit to all of this verticality? Back in 1860s Europe, the steam-powered paternoster elevator, a series of little boxes running on a loop like a Ferris wheel, had no doors and no stopping. Just people hopping on and people hopping off, like this. Sure, there was no waiting around, but nicknamed the elevator of death, the paternoster didn't really catch on in the rest of the world. I wonder why. So, we stuck with the safer option for a very long time. But trust me, some serious changes to the way we move around in these things are underway. Going higher and faster has always been the driving force behind elevator design. And engineers are now talking about building a mile-high skyscraper, roughly 1,600 meters tall. Meanwhile, dozens of brand new super tall buildings of over 300 meters, or just short of 1,000 feet, are going up all over the world. Because with a population that's going to hit the 10 billion mark relatively soon, the only way to build, once again, is up.
We could imagine a building holding 100,000 people. Therefore, we need very, very efficient and effective elevators to make those mega buildings possible.
But there's a problem.
One big limitation factor for elevators these days are the ropes. People don't know that. If a building gets higher than 450 meters, you cannot do it on ropes anymore.
Well, you can, but you'll need to take 2, 3, or even 4 elevators to make it to your destination. That's because the longer the cable is, the heavier it becomes. So, once you get past those 450 meters, the cable becomes too heavy to efficiently move the car up and down the shaft. But inside this test tower in Rottweil, Germany, elevator engineers are working on something that would revolutionize elevator transport. This here is called the multi.
With a multi, we can go unlimited heights. And in addition to that, you can go in another direction. The only way is you have to get rid of the ropes.
And trade them in for magnets. A magnetized coil running along the shaft repels magnets in the elevator cabin, causing it to levitate just above the shafts and propelling it along the rails. It's the same magnetic levitation technology used by the bullet train. They obviously won't travel as fast as this thing! But they will travel in other directions, not just up and down. Like train tracks, the system features exchanges that rotate and change direction.
When this exchanger turned, you see this bolt popping in. It locks. And what you see here is the exchanger is turning the back of the cabin. The cabin still sits straight on the sledge, and now it can go the other direction.
So, the race to the top has become a race to the side? hang on here. Why do we want to go sideways if the point is to go higher?
Elevators are the transportation system which are transporting the most people all over the world, even more than airplanes, more than trains, and altogether. Lift industry, elevator industry is all about frequency of people and how many people we can transport in a building. You can go there with two ways of thinking. You can create a huge, big cabin, like 25 or 30 people even, and transport this chunk of people up in the building. Or you think about making these cabins smaller, but having more of them.
In the multi-system, a cabin can move out of the way to let people in or out, allowing other cabins to keep moving. Kind of like an elevator highway, with fast lanes and exits.
One of the best ways to think about the modern elevator is as an extension of an urban transportation system. I would ride the metro in, it would stop at my building, I would exit the metro, enter an elevator, and it would take me to my office. Not only to my office, it would take me up and then across and over to another building, and I've not stepped outside at all. So it's an integrated transportation system.
This is no longer about just getting up to our office or apartment or penthouse. This thing will create entire multi-level cities. And while these guys iron out the kinks to make elevators move horizontally, others are still thinking about going up and up and up. Today, if you want to boldly go where no one has gone before, well, your only option is to become an astronaut. Or to be really, really rich. But tomorrow, it might be as easy as pressing a button.
If you're going to be serious about exploring space, if you're going to be serious about getting significant quantities of material off the surface of the Earth and into space, elevators are incredibly efficient. If you just think about wearing an Iron Man-style jetpack and trying to fly with sheer rocket power up to the top of a building like the Empire State Building versus the amazing efficiency of an elevator just carrying you up there, you can see why people start to talk about space elevators. The only problem, of course, is it's completely impossible to build one, given our current technology.
All right, it'll be a little more complicated than just pushing a button. First, the shaft would have to be at least 40,000 times taller than anything we've ever built. Then, a cable would have to be attached to, say, I don't know, a satellite or an asteroid, I guess, which for reasons we won't discuss here would need to be 35,786 kilometers up. Yeah. If we manage to keep that object in perpetual rotation, to keep its relative position constant, it should keep that cable taut and allow you to finally get up to the space penthouse you've been meaning to redecorate.
I mean, it makes perfect sense in theory. In practice, your problem is, how on earth do you make something strong enough to attach an asteroid?
All right, the space race is on again. Japan has said it'll build one of these babies by the year 2050. And China, not to be outdone, wants to build one as soon as 2045. The bottom line here is that space elevators could be the answer to ensuring humanity's growth potentially beyond our solar system. Or maybe not.
It's a reminder that the elevator is just a miracle of efficiency. It's a great way to travel vertically, and that means it's a great way to travel.
Well, I'm gonna call this one a day. It's been one of those weeks, you know? Well, seems the algorithms are in my favor. For once. Algorithms. Genius stuff. Hope I don't hit traffic.